Welcome to the Everyday Citizens Tactical Podcast, Episode 33, Active Shooter Response. My name is Jeremy, and as always, I will be your host. In this episode, we discuss the ever-changing threat of an active shooter scenario, how the motivated citizenry can prepare and help in this event, as well as what to expect from law enforcement on scene. Today I'm joined by the owner of Grenzer Concepts. Jacob comes from a mixed background of both military and law enforcement, and has real-world experience responding to an active shooter situation in the line of duty. So, without any further delay, let's dive in.
Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours. Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours.
Alright, welcome back to the podcast, guys. I know it's been a minute, but this is going to be a really good episode. I think we've got a really good guest. He's actually a reference, kind of, from Wandering Hoosier. So, shout out to him. Jacob, how are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine and dandy. You want to go ahead and give everybody a little introduction and kind of tell everybody what you're about, who you are, and what you kind of got going on the side?
For sure. I'm Jacob. I'm currently law enforcement. I've been doing that for a little over 5 years. Currently on a SWAT team as well. Also, National Guard infantry, came over from the reserves. Been in the military in general for about 9 years now. And on the side, I run Grenzer Concepts. It's kind of morphed into an active assailant training for financial institutions, but also we do some carbine work out at distance, things of that nature, but more of a side gig. But I enjoy doing it a lot.
Cool. It's kind of, obviously it's two completely different beasts, but would you say you've probably learned more from the law enforcement side or the military side, and just your general skills and oversight of just everything we have to face in the world right now?
Oh, I would say law enforcement by far. It gives you the most raw experience of what people's worst day can be. I have real world experience with an actual, active assailant. I've responded to one before. It's a different beast. It's completely different. In the military, they still teach the FBI standard of run, hide, fight. It's easy to remember. Those 3 words are easy to remember, but it's not always the best case and not always what you should do. But actually responding to stuff 100% gives you the best, most genuine experience for things.
For sure. My military guys won't like to hear it, but unless you're a person that's actively deployed to not even necessarily a combat zone, but a contentious area, whether it be something humanitarian, embassy evacuation, like anything like that.
Yeah.
The first responders kind of got a leg up in like real world experience in a sense. Like I said, two completely different beasts.
Yeah, you're responding to American citizens versus, depending on what you're doing, you're responding to, U.S. troops who are obviously American citizens, but you may not be. Like you said, depending on what you're doing, if it's humanitarian crisis, the response might be different versus your response towards innocent American civilians on U.S. soil. It can be a completely different experience.
But even from kind of like the sense of what would I do when the adrenaline starts pumping? Like, cops, even just general street cops get into fights with assholes all the time, usually for absolutely no reason. Sometimes they pick fights that they shouldn't pick, but a lot of times people are just assholes. Even fire and police, what would you do when there's real life patients bleeding in front of you, cardiac arrests, also fighting because you got a psych patient in the back of the ambulance. There's just they got just that leg up a little bit. Now, I would say that I think maybe the overall training scheme and or plan is much better from the military side, because obviously their entire job on a day-to-day basis is training, where first responders, their job is responding with a little bit of training here and there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah,
two completely different beasts. But yeah, obviously myself on the fire side and then military, so we've got a lot of kind of experience to come and pull together for this. We're going to talk about active shooter scenarios, and unfortunately, not only is the active shooter threat becoming more and more prevalent, it's completely changed from the inception of the tactical civilian kind of concept, kind of post GWAT a little bit. That late 2000s, early 2010s, where people actually started to conceal carry with Kydex holsters and go to the range regularly. It completely changed from Granddad with his 1911 and his leather holster that he shot once a year. What are your kind of general thoughts just in general about the active shooter threat that we face now?
I think active shooters, especially in it's not, because the FBI defines active shooter as, it's kind of, it doesn't necessarily need to be, a guy going into a school and shooting up the school. It can be, the general definition is like an individual actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined and populated area, right? It's very generally. It could be someone shoots up a house, that has a birthday party in it that the dude hates, which is not uncommon, right? Mm-hmm. That is defined as an active shooter. But what we're talking about is that school, financial institution, mall, public space, and it is becoming more popular. And I think that has to do with, the news, social media, all that stuff, giving it more attention. That sounds wrong when I say more attention, but it does make it kind of popularized. I know it's probably not the right word, but you see people kind of try to recreate stuff that has happened in the past, and it's leading on to more stuff, right? It's just, I think that has had a huge influence in its social media and everything.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I think one of the biggest things that's changed is who is the threat or the threats from an active shooter. From the late 2000s, early 2010s, we thought of active shooter really mainly as kind of like somebody who's just completely off their rocker. Somebody who's just mentally ill, has been fed up with life. That one guy. Every once in a while, you got like terrorist cell kind of wannabe guy. But the predominant amount of times, it's just some American who just is mentally ill and has just lost it. Yeah. Now we kind of face something different. I feel like not just from that, because we have a lot of that still, but we have the threats of organized international terror cells that have really dug roots in the U.S. We have gangs. The cartel. I always tell people the cartel is one of the biggest things that I'm concerned about.
Absolutely. It's growing daily. That threat is growing daily. Yeah.
And, so the threat is a lot more dynamic. And I think that's kind of why I got the idea for this specific episode and bringing somebody on, is as the threat changes, the gear changes, the mindset changes. And that's going to be a lot of what we dive into. So without giving away too many details, you yourself, while on duty as a law enforcement officer, you responded to an active shooter scenario. Could you walk us through what happened a little bit and kind of your mindset going into it and any takeaways you got? Obviously without giving away too much personal details.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so the active shooter incident I responded to came out early in the morning. While en route, we heard that an officer was down. So my mindset initially changed to, all right, cool. This is going to be a hell of a gunfight, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm preparing that, and I'm a FTO, so I'm a field training officer. So I had a newer officer riding with me that I was training. So I was kind of mentally preparing him for what might be coming, which is, there's, you might get shot at. You probably will get shot at. You might have to shoot somebody, and there's going to be casualties based on the radio information that we were having at that time, right? So, actually, for our incident, a family member of the guy that committed the active shooter called in saying this was getting ready to happen. So we kind of had a head start on it. Our response time was like a minute, 30 seconds. which is pretty. It's up there, right? I think the average is 3 to 5 minutes, so that was on the lower end of response times, which I'm pretty proud of. When I arrived, the threat had already been eliminated as I was arriving. The officer that was down got loaded up into EMS as I was arriving. So when I arrived, the threat that we knew about had been eliminated. What we had to do then was treat casualties and clear for any secondary threats, which at that time we had no information of. Mm-hmm. But you never want to discount that there is a second threat that might be somewhere related, might be waiting or might be hiding, whatever it is. Walked in, or I shouldn't say walk. We ran in, bunch of casualties, 7 casualties. Mm-hmm. That is unlike anything I have ever seen, and I work in a very violent area. I've seen more homicides than I care to remember. I've seen more shootings than I care to remember. Mm-hmm. It's a different ball game when it's that many people in one specific location. Mm-hmm. When you're treating 7 people, or in the room that I went into, there was 5 casualties. I put 4 chest seals on one girl that was still alive. The rest of them were already deceased at that point. Mm-hmm. She ended up passing away as well. We carried another girl out, who was shot in the leg. We had to put 2 tourniquets on her. It's unlike anything I have ever experienced. And like I said, I've responded to more shootings than I care to remember.
And I've had very recently at the firehouse, I taught a mass CAS and kind of triage refresher. Yeah. And that was one of my big points, kind of like what you said about walking in and you got 5 casualties on the ground. Mm-hmm. It's overwhelming. It's nothing like you've ever seen. And my point to them was, we respond all day to accidents that have, or incidents that have one patient, maybe 2 patients, maybe 3 at a bad car accident. But very few people have responded to a scenario where you have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 30, 40, patients, plus who else is hysteric. I mean, it really is something you truly have to not only train for, but run the mental scenarios for in your head. And I think that truly does help. The first time you face something you've never physically faced before is if you've done that mental exercise enough paired with the physical trainings, you will do better. You will have less panic.
100%. And that's something that as a department, active shooter gets trained, but when it happens for real, it's like anything else, right? Like something happens, training follows on with that, saying, okay, this is what happened. These are the deficiencies. This is what we need to work on. Mm-hmm. So from that, we started focusing more on, like you said, the triage aspect of you've got multiple people that need to be cared for. As much as you want to care for everybody, you just can't, right? So you got to have a way to categorize people. Like, you're shot in the head. I'm sorry. You might be alive barely, but like this person's shot in the leg. I'm sorry. I have to step over you to treat this person, put a tourniquet on them and move on to the next person. And it is mentally very difficult to just step over someone like that. Mm-hmm. And it's like in other active shooter incidents, you cannot, like if the threat, luckily when I got there, the threat was eliminated by the time I made entry. Mm-hmm. But other incidences, you see around the country where the threat is not eliminated when they make entry and they are actively stepping over women, children, people, men that are dying. And you have to say, I will be back and go on. And you have to mentally be ready for stuff like that when you go to, football games, sporting events, concerts, anything like that, like Las Vegas, like, God, I couldn't imagine dealing with that. There's hundreds of people, hundreds of casualties. That is unreal.
As absolutely horrible as the Tennessee school shooting was that we had 2 years ago, the body cam footage that came from that incident is one of the greatest pieces of training material that I think anybody could have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, in order to save more lives, you have to eliminate the threat, because otherwise you're just you're treating one person while 3 other people get shot, and it's just the math doesn't work out. Like, I'm sorry, I know this you love this person, but you got to do what's best for everybody. So,
and this goes, it's to the same level to all of my civilian organizations. Guys that are part of large organized groups. If you're doing good march training, good scenario-based march training, whoever your training officer is, everybody at some point in time has been given a casualty, and whatever contact is made, and people want to stay sucked into casualties instead of responding to that threat, gaining fire superiority, whatever it is. The concept goes over to active shooter all the same. The gunfight has to come first.
Absolutely. I mean, it's march, but it's smarts, right? There's an S in front of that. You got to have security. You have to have a way to. I mean, if you're treating someone and you get shot in the head, what good have you done to them? Right? Because you didn't have security. It's we've kind of just defined it as, okay, if 15 officers are on scene and they're pushing to the threat, and you have 1 million casualties, or 15 casualties, that are behind them, that's now a different zone. We call it like a warm zone. I don't know if you guys do the same thing, but
yeah,
when you're in that warm zone, if you have enough officers to handle the threat, depending on the situation, however many officers it is, whatever, you can begin triaging those into a cold zone. If you have to move them into a secure area. But security, you got to have security, or else it can all go bad for everybody. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, for sure. I would assume that at your department, all street cops are carrying long guns, or at least shotguns at this point in their patrol cars.
Everybody. So I was the last academy class that went through that had shotguns. Everybody after me is issued a patrol rifle, and everybody before me either has a shotgun or has a rifle, because they have the opportunity to take a rifle class and get issued a rifle.
Nice.
So everybody should. I'm not going to, obviously I'm sure there's some officers that choose not to do it. That's on them. I don't agree with it. But every officer should have at least a shotgun or a rifle.
Absolutely. And really, especially if we're just talking, hey, what am I responding to? My greatest threat is active shooter. I do not want a shotgun. Shotguns are good. No. Shotguns are good at some things, but the things they are good at, that's about it. I do not want a shotgun.
Yeah, it's a tool that is good, like you said, it's good at what it does, and it's not good at what it doesn't do. It is is a very specific tool for a specific purpose, especially with the rounds that were issued. We get buckshot. If you got there's an active shooter. Don't quote me on it. It was somewhere in Texas. I can't remember what city it was, maybe Dallas. But the officer took a shot at like 100-something yards, 107 yards, I think. Killed him, killed the active shooter. But he had a rifle, right? Like you can't tell me that your 12 gauge with buckshot would have had the same effect. You just can't convince me. You can't. So the shotgun is good for what it does, like you said. But if I had to choose, I'd take a rifle 7 days a week and twice on Sunday.
I gotcha. So before we get into kind of our next kind of topic of conversation, I want to give you a scenario. And as active law enforcement, I want you to give me your honest reaction and what you think your response would be.
Okay.
You are dispatched for an active shooter scenario, unknown amounts of threats at a local supermarket. You're the first, you believe you're one of the first officers that arrives on scene. And when you make entry, when you get out of your patrol car, you hear shots fired. You make entry through the kind of those classic sliding doors to kind of get a general assessment. People are running out, and you're trying to identify at least the direction where the threat is.
Yep.
I don't know your department's policy on wait for other officers or just get to the threat. So we'll just play through the scenario.
Sure.
You go through the sliding doors. You pass the first 4 or 5 people that are running out that door. and you find somebody stacked up on kind of an aisle in a Ranger green plate carrier who yells green, green, green at you, and he is actively engaging an active shooter, what is your first thoughts go?
First of all, so our department policy is if you're the first one on scene and you're by yourself, you're making entry. We don't wait for a second, or some departments I think wait for 4. Mm-hmm. If you're by yourself, you're by yourself. It is what it is. You are not the highest priority it's hostages, innocent civilians, then the suspect, right? So
okay.
You're not the highest priority. So you make entry. In this scenario, I make entry. I'm hoping I'm getting suspect description, right? But this will probably come up later as far as dispatch is a game of telephone, literally a game of telephone, where for us particularly, so we have your call takers who then transferred over to our dispatchers who then transferred to us. So it's like a third party call by the time we hit. Yeah. Hopefully I have suspect description, right? I make entry. I see this dude engaging someone. Hopefully I have suspect description. All right. He's engaging someone that looks like the suspect. What can I do? Can I engage him? Do I have a clear foreground, background? If not, I might have to find a different angle to engage him.
Okay.
If he's by himself and it's just me and him, cool. Let's engage the suspect if I can. There's so many variables that could come to play for this. It's kind of hard to say exactly what I would do, but that's the baseline of how I personally would respond.
Cool. And there's a reason I wanted to give that to you raw.
Yeah.
And that's because a lot of people, both the civilian and law enforcement, don't realize how many good guys are on the field, and nobody really knows how to work with each other in a proficient manner. And obviously,
for sure,
especially here at ECT, I'm always telling guys, either in the medical classes or pistol classes, whatever it is, professionalism is key. And professionalism will recognize professionalism.
Yep.
If you walked in the door and I'm shooting the active shooter, and say I'm the civilian that's responding to active shooter, and I'm standing there with just my rifle, no sense of identification on my gear or even the attire that I'm wearing, I look like a bag of shit, and I'm just standing there with a black AR shooting. What is your perception of some guy in raggedy clothing with an AR versus a guy who seems well put together, fit, plate carrier, rifle, yells green, 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 identifies himself, whatever it might be. Two completely different scenarios.
100%. And I've responded to not active shooter situations, but it was a self-defense sort of situation where a guy was shooting at another party. He did not look like that, right? So I drew down on him and was like, what? I addressed him like I needed to address him, as if he was a threat, because I had no bearing. He didn't identify himself as I am here to assist. I am actively engaging the threat. Again, that comes down also, just so you know, like if you actively engage an active shooter, someone will call on you and say that there's a second gunman inside. Yeah. Hopefully, actually, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. The initial description will be put out repeatedly. When I say repeat, I mean like it'll be put out constantly. They will eventually say there might be another shooter described as this, but if I make entry, we've eliminated the threat, and then I hear on the radio, hey, might be a second shooter. He's wearing whatever this guy is wearing. I'm like, radio, be advised, not the shooter. I'm good. I have him in my, we're good. I'm sitting here next to him. I'm all good over here. He's not the shooter. There's going to be other stuff that follows on after that. Sure. There's going to be questions that are going to be need to be answered by whoever it is, but it'll go differently if you are actively positively identifying yourself to law enforcement that arrives on scene.
And it's hard to not get ahead of myself because there's so many different things we kind of got to discuss with this. But as the responding civilian, if you're doing so armed, if you responded with your concealed carry and you never left the premises, you're not going to have time, more than likely, when you initially respond to make that 911 call, describe yourself, the scenario, and the attacker. You're more than likely going to begin that engagement, and hopefully it ends before law enforcement even arrives, and then you can make your phone call or holster up and then identify yourself early on to law enforcement.
Yeah. I mean, that's best case scenario. Absolutely.
Best case scenario. Now, is it always going to go that way? Probably not. Now, if you are a civilian who is confident, proficient, professional, and say you were in the parking lot by yourself, no kids, no wife, nothing like that, and you were loading your groceries into your car, and all of a sudden you hear 10, 12, 15, 30 shots fired inside the grocery store. You grab your truck gun, or you just pull your CCW, you pursue that front door, and you make entry. It would be it would behoove you. I'm going to use the word behoove. It would behoove you to make a phone call in the time it takes you to get from your car to the front door and start that early communication and identification, because the last thing you do want to do is be seen as the guy running through the front door as active shots are being fired with a gun drawn, and either A, be mistaken by police when they arrive on scene, or run in way too fast and get hit by a civilian that's inside that's already responding to that active shooter.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. If you have the time, the distance, and the opportunity, if you have the time, call. And especially if you have, I would advise, if you conceal carry and you are prepared to respond to something like this, have something in your vehicle that is easily identifiable that you can throw on really quick. Like, we get issued certain things that allow us, even if we're in plain clothes, that we keep, like I keep in my personal vehicles, that easily allow me to be identified as the police. Now, I'm not saying don't go out and buy something that says police on it, but if you say, if you have an orange beanie in your car, an orange toboggan, right? You can throw that on and say, I'm the guy, it's July, and it's 110 degrees outside, and you say, I'm the guy wearing the orange beanie, you're probably going to be the only guy out there wearing an orange beanie. Mm-hmm. Something that's easily identifiable that you can throw on quick, I'm not saying it's got to be a hat. It can be a wristband. When I say a wristband, I mean like a large, like flat, 2-3 inch wide wristband. Mm-hmm. Something that is easily identifiable to responding officers that can trigger, like, okay, I heard on the radio there's a good guy that called on scene that's saying he's engaged in an active shooter and he's wearing this. I see that guy. Cool. Let me see what's up. Like, is he done engaging this guy? Is the threat eliminated? What do we need to do? Like, but always, if you have the time, call.
Are you familiar with Gray Fighter, the company?
I'm not. No.
You should look them up. Joey from Gray Fighter is also law enforcement and runs Trinity Training Complex in Gray Fighter. Phenomenal guy. I've had him on the podcast as well. Gray Fighter makes various standardized identification material specifically for police, and in order to get it, you have to submit your department identification, so that way like, shit guys are not just going to their website and buying stuff. Like, there is a vetting process for it. He makes some really cool stuff. If you're a law enforcement and listening to this, go check it out. If you're a civilian, sorry, you're out of luck. And unfortunately, as a civilian, we're not able to standardize anything like that, because, if I was a company that made patches that said civilian responder, how am I going to vet all the civilians? Like, there's just no way to do it.
You just can't. Yeah, you can't. No. And that would invite people with bad intentions to take advantage of that. 100%.
You could put civilian on your plate carrier, but I don't know how much of a difference it may make if you put a civilian placard on the back of your plate carrier, or whatever. A officer might not even notice it as it is. So maybe keeping something just unique that is not standardized across the
Mhm.
community is probably best. Or, like I said before, early call out. If you're a person that has received good room clearing training, good active shooter training, whatever it is, doing good call outs and communication early on, that will instinctually probably kick in with most law enforcement. Like, oh, this guy said this. I remember
Mhm.
when my buddies said this in the shoot house. Okay, this
Yep.
guy is friend, not food.
Yep. I mean, that's the biggest thing is it's so dependent on so many different variables as far as like where you're at in the structure. Are you going to put yourself on the opposite side of the threat that law enforcement's going to enter on? So you're going to be in line with law enforcement. So they're going to engage the threat, and then you're kind of in the backdrop.
Yeah.
So they're going to see you after the threat, or are they going to see you first? There's so many different variables that the stars kind of have to align, but you can help them align by being proactive in calling, being proactive with the communication, being proactive with things that are easily identifiable. And if you are actively like helping people, that's going to change a lot of law enforcement tune when they arrive on scene and seeing some dude. If you're performing medical on somebody, stuff like that, that's going to change the tempo of everything significantly.
Mm-hmm. And we'll have a YouTube video out for ECT. We're kind of partnering with HRT a little bit to create like a very simple but proficient kind of vehicle kit kind of layout. And one of the big things I'm going to hit on in that is in my own SOPs, if I don kit and grab rifle to respond to an active shooter, one thing that I keep in my daily drive every single day, and if I switch from my daily drive to my truck, I switch the bag, is I always have my big Coyote Brown trauma bag that says medical on the back of it with a red cross. And that would be what is on my back of my plate carrier. So if a cop walks up behind you and kind of stacks on you and is like, what does this guy got going on? And he sees a guy in a plate carrier with a medical backpack on, he's going to be like, oh, again, this guy is friend, not food.
Yeah, I mean, that I would love to be able to say that, most law enforcement have the highest level of training that they could possibly have, like to the same level of, most tactical teams, whether, SWAT, SOT, whatever you want to call yourself. But unfortunately, most don't. Mm-hmm. But the layman officer, if I'm going in and I've heard a description, dude wearing black t-shirt, blue jeans, and then I see this guy wearing a plate carrier and a tan backpack that's got a medical whatever it says on it. Immediately, I'm like, who's this guy? Who are you? You must. I mean, you're not shooting at anybody, so you must be on our side. So cool, come with us, or whatever it is, like hang tight. Whatever the situation is. But that makes a huge difference.
I can't speak for law enforcement. I'm a firefighter. I'm a lot cooler, but
calm down.
But if I was, responding to an active shooter or actively responding to an active shooter and what appeared to be another concealed carry guy, came up behind me, or I came up on another concealed carry, civilian, if he kind of seems well put together and, we can kind of, without too much communication, just realize like, all right, we're going to do this together. We're now a team. Let's go get this.
Yep.
In theory, hopefully, going back down to that base patrolman, hopefully they have the same mindset because they are also just a person at the end of the day. They're not computer programmed.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if I see a dude that is in an active shooter situation, almost everybody that is healthy enough to run away is going to run away. Mm-hmm. So if I'm responding on scene and I see a dude who is, like you said, well put together and is running towards, I can hear gunfire. I don't see him shooting, but I hear gunfire. He's running towards that. I'm like, that dude is either like And if I don't have dispatch saying there's 2 shooters, I'm like, this guy's got to be doing something. He's got to be going to either help or he's got family, like whatever it is. He's not there for ill intent.
Mm-hmm. For sure. What is, and if they're differing opinions, give 2 different opinions, both civilian and then law enforcement opinion. What is your opinion on civilians and truck kit, specifically for the purpose of active shooter response, not like their get home stuff? Like a person that has kit and a very baseline rifle, like if there's an active shooter or multiple active shooters, if given the opportunity, I will either move back to my car or respond to my car to the active shooter. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think as law enforcement, you should always have something in your car that is for a mass casualty event. Now, I'm not saying you need to have a whole, there's companies that make active shooter bags that have packs in them that are individually, so you can literally hand them out as you're, say if you're not one of the first, 10, 15, whatever, however many officers it is, you can start handing these kits out to people. They feed from the bottom of the pack, and you can start handing them out. It's basically like 2 chest seals and a tourniquet, 2 chest seals and a tourniquet. You just hand those out to people that are wounded, that are conscious enough. Say, hey, granted, most people don't know how to apply that stuff, which is a disservice. As a citizen, you should know how to at least apply a tourniquet and a chest seal. You can take an hour class and get that training, right? I'm not saying law enforcement needs that, but after our active shooter, so I will be honest, I did not have enough stuff in ours. I ran out of chest seals.
Oh yeah, for sure. Chest seals go fast, and
faster than people think, man. It's wild. Like I see a lot of dudes with their kits, and they have 2 chest seals, 2 tourniquets, and a bunch of gauze. I'm not saying don't carry all the gauze, but if you got to drop 1 pack of gauze to make room for another chest seal, another double pack of chest seals, personally, I would do that. And I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a paramedic. I'm not EMT like you. I'm just a dude that's responded to some, a lot of shootings and 1 active shooter thing. But in my experience, tourniquets and chest seals will get you where you need to go as long as the EMS gets there within a timely manner.
And and it does not even mean necessarily, and I can speak from experience, that EMS is going to show up with enough stuff. I mean, they're just not. If you think that EMS is going to show up with just handfuls of tourniquets and chest seals and pressure dressings and gauze, you are sadly mistaken.
Oh, 100%. I'm trying to think. I'm sure it's happened. I cannot remember a time where we, as law enforcement, have responded to a scene and ran out of tourniquets, because we keep personally, I keep 2 on me at all times, and then a bunch in my bag that I carry. I've never seen EMS put a tourniquet on.
Civilian EMS, man, I have this conversation with people all the time on the EMS side. Civilian EMS is not as good at, I will call it, combat trauma as people think they may be. EMS and military trauma medicine did not align at all until maybe 2015, 2016, when civilian EMS started to open their eyes a little bit more and realize the reality, because there was so much data coming back from GWAT. But to this day, I still know people that, I won't even say I know people, I know departments of people who do not understand the full functionality of an occlusive dressing, aka chest seal, its many capabilities, so on and so forth, let alone how to truly apply a tourniquet correctly.
Oh, 100%. Like, I'm fortunate enough to work in an area where we have a level 1 trauma center in the area that I work within a 10-minute drive or less. You do. Depending on how fast you're going, it can be like 6 minutes, 5 minutes. But Our EMS, man, like, without ragging on them, if I get shot, I've told the dudes that I work with, like, treat me, put me in the back of your police car, and we're going. Like, don't wait for EMS. I do not care. If put a chest seal, put a tourniquet, do whatever you got to do. We're going. Like, again, I'm not ragging on EMS in general. Mm-hmm. Just the area that I work, they deal with a lot of trauma, but they're kind of held up by the fact that we do have that level 1 trauma center that allows them to kind of get away with more than what they probably should because they get there so quick.
Sure. No, 100%. I don't disagree with you at all. That goes across multiple categories of medicine across EMS, is that there are some departments or areas of the country that EMS's skills don't broaden or develop as much as they maybe should because so many of us are, kind of blessed and spoiled with various higher capability hospitals. Now you get into like the rural areas, people that are working cardiac arrest for like 30 minutes in the back of an ambulance, people that are taking gunshot victims, like, 45 minutes to a hospital if they didn't get air cared. Like, those rural police departments or fire departments, we shit on them a lot, but when shit goes down, they know what's going on.
Oh yeah, I would, and the amount of traumatic wounds that they treat like gunshots. Of course, they would see a lot more accidents and things like that, but the few gunshots they get, they do have to treat them, like you said, 30 minutes. That's a long time for a gunshot wound, especially, if it's depending on where it's at. Like, that is a long time to maintain somebody, to keep them alive until they get to that hospital. So like I said, for law enforcement, you need more chest seals, more tourniquets than you think you do. Honestly, for an event like that, I'm not packing wounds. I'm triaging.
Oh, for sure.
And going on. For civilian dudes, same thing. I mean, you might end up packing your wounds for yourself or your loved ones or other people, depending on the response time for law. If you're rural and, response time, you might have one officer on scene and one EMS wagon on scene for, in 5, 10, 15 minutes, and then it's going to be another 10 minutes before the next one gets on scene. Mm-hmm. You might have to end up doing a lot more care than you think you need to do. Mm-hmm. But the tourniquets and chest seals will keep people from expiring faster than they need to. Like that, as you well know, your massive bleeding and your respirations in March, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have the ability to do things like an MPA, things like that to secure an airway, but the massive bleeding, you got to be able to control that first and foremost. That's going to kill you lickety split.
Yeah, for the civilians on the medical side of that, what comes after triage? The rest of March. The rest of it.
Yep.
You are wrapping all of the wounds. You are packing the injury sites below that tourniquet. You are, if you're a person that carries like the pocket BVM, the collapsible ones from North American Rescue, you may be, ventilating somebody waiting for EMS to get there. You might be bagging
someone. Yep.
EMS may show up and you may have, 11 red tags laying in the front yard of, this department store. It's going to take a while to get adequate fire and EMS there.
Oh, yeah. Especially, like I said, you're in a rural area or even a smaller city where you don't have dozens of ambulances, dozens of units on scene, or you might have one ambulance and one fire station that has 2 trucks. If you've got 12 people that are injured, there's a lot that needs to happen. Like you said, you've got circulation, you've got you might have to wrap people in reflective blankets because they're going hypothermic. Mm-hmm.
Especially I think wintertime, Christmas shopping, active shooter.
I carry, and this is a I will say a lack on my part. Again, like we go back to, I'm spoiled because I have a level 1 trauma center close to me. Mm-hmm. I carry 2 Mylar blankets. Like that's it. And is that enough for an active shooter situation? Probably not. I should carry more. I will carry more. But that is all things you need to consider. Like you got to take in your environment and base your med kit off of that. I'm always going to say chest seals, tourniquets. If you're close to a level 1 trauma center with a lot of units that can respond quickly, you can I'm not going to say probably, you might have the opportunity to scale back the amount of gauze and the amount of dressing. You know, if you got, I'm a huge proponent of Elias dressings. Do you guys carry the Elias bandages?
We don't. Although we have seen a few demos of them recently.
Oh man, they're awesome. I'm a huge fan of them because they have a piece of plastic in there that you can either use for like if you have intestines or anything falling out, you can kind of wrap it to keep them from drying out, or you can use it as an improvised chest seal with tape. They have packing gauze and they have, you know, a pressure dressing with a little cup on it, so it's really a really good pressure dressing.
Kind of back to this, we went straight to medical.
Yeah.
Do you believe that civilians should, not can, we all know we can't, we can about do whatever the hell we want, but should carry some sort of vehicle loadouts if you are a person that sees yourself to that moral calling to respond to it? Should they carry some sort of very basic armor and rifle in their vehicles?
I'm not going to, it's very personal. If you are a person that says, if I'm at a mall and there's an active shooter, I'm going to respond to try to save other innocent lives. Like, man, what would you rather take? Would you rather take your Glock 19 or would you rather take your 10.5 AR? Dude, I'm taking a fucking rifle.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And I'm not going to take 12 mags. Like, I'm not going into, I hope I'm not going into a sustained, 6-hour gunfight.
Not unless you're at the Moscow theater.
Fuck. Yeah. That is wild. But for the situations, the majority, right, you got to prepare for what's probable, not what's possible. But so what's probable is 1 is most likely, 2 is even, we see it significantly less, but 1 is the most likely, right? 1 shooter. How many rounds do you need to fight that 1 shooter? Man, yeah, right, yeah.
All of them. Every single one.
A 240 with 800 rounds, right? Like
vehicle LSW.
That's right. Man, like if you've got armor, slap it on. If you got 3 mags up front, 1 in the gun,
you're rocking pretty good there.
Yeah, I mean, like I run 4 mags as for our tactical team, for our SWAT team. That's what I run is 4 mags, right? 1 in the gun, 2 on my plate carrier, 1 on my belt, and then other accoutrement. And I'm comfortable with any situation. Granted, it's a little bit different because I've got like at a minimum 8 other dudes with me.
Sure.
But even if I was by myself for any situation that I've ever encountered, I'm comfortable with 4 mags, personally.
And I can't stress enough the mental commitment to this that comes with this. Not everybody is comfortable or should be an individual that responds from their vehicle, whether you started in the active shooter area or not, in kit and rifle and pursue that threat. I'm a big proponent of saying if someone doesn't belong being there, they probably shouldn't be there.
100%. If you're not comfortable with saying there's a chance that I'm going to die, right? Like that is, you're going into a gunfight. You have to realize, like at that point, it's kind of a 50-50 gunfight. If you get armor, helps you out a little bit, but it's man, if you're unlucky, you could be good and unlucky and die.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't remember. There was some tier 1 guy. I can't remember who said it, but he said, "I'd rather be lucky than good any day of the week."
Sure.
And you have to be comfortable saying, like, dude, I have this might be it. This is, if you're not, man, chill out at the truck. You see law enforcement arrive, give them help. Like, hey, he's over there. I saw him. He's wearing this. If you didn't see him, say, it's that way. That's all I know. And if you want to provide medical aid, say, hey, listen, I've got a med bag in my truck. Can I help?
And that's a great spot to be. And that's completely fine. Fantastic.
There's no shame in that, man. Like, you didn't sign up to be law enforcement. You didn't sign up to be military. Like, you're just a dude trying to help out. You are absolutely helping out by saying, I don't want to get in this gunfight, but I want to try to help people by providing medical aid. I personally, I wouldn't tell you no. I would just say, hang tight. Like, let's secure this, get to safety if you can. Like, I can't tell you exactly where to go at that point. First of all, I'm not concerned with it. I have to eliminate a threat. So I'm probably just going to say thanks and run by you and go on. But yeah, if you're not mentally ready, don't put yourself in that position, because you're just going to become a liability.
And if you are an individual that's like, I have the higher moral calling to protect and save lives, then you've got to be confident. You've got to be a motherfucker. You do.
100%.
It is violence of action, and that is the only thing that will stop that active shooter.
If you've never been in a gunfight, or if you've never been in a situation where, again, unfortunately, most of these situations if you're a civilian, you will probably have to walk over dead people, or at least see dead people that you are unable to treat, or wounded people that are screaming for help, calling out the whatever higher power they believe in. Like, you have to be ready for that. And it is going to be the most violent and most, I don't want to say disturbing, but most, like, it's going to be overwhelming. Dude, like, as someone who has experienced that, who has both, experienced a gunfight and experienced that, it is significantly overwhelming to see that amount of casualties in one specific area and be like, where do I start? But you have to be ready to both engage that threat, and then after that, you've got to start taking care of people.
Mm-hmm. And
a pair of flex cuffs is not a bad idea either, by the way. Like,
I made a note of that when we were going to talk about gear. I was going to talk about handcuffs and flex cuffs, because that is a great point.
Yeah.
One more point on the medical stuff, and I kind of want to move along.
Yeah.
The other thing you have to be prepared to deal with is civilians that are not hurt but are severely panic, anxious, just absolutely bonkers traumatic. For my firefighters that have worked cardiac arrests and dealt with overdoses and stuff like that, you know how absolutely hectic, family can be. Family doesn't realize family needs to get out of the room when things get kind of crazy.
Yep.
I have, yelled at mom to get the kids out of the room because dad's dead. I've yelled at, grandma to get out of the room. I've yelled at whoever, hey, this is not the place for you to be. And it's going to be the same thing when that active shooter response happens, is people are going to be panicked. People are going to be anxious. People are going to be running around. People may flock to you. You may be confident, moving through, well-dressed, and people are going to flock to you and be like, hey, I need help, or, whatever it is. And you've got to be able to handle that just as much as you handle the bodies you got to walk over.
It's going to be to the nth degree, because you're going to get it from both sides. Because in today's day and age, you're going to have people streaming it for whatever reason. You see it a lot in school shootings. They stream it. So you have parents showing up at the same time as law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And you have people running hysterically, which I cannot blame them for in the slightest, right? It's a lot of people, as you well know, who are not prepared citizens, who are not you know what I'm talking, like the average
Sure, yeah.
person, right? Like they're just, they go to their 9 to 5, they go home, they watch their, NFL, they drink some beers, they go to sleep, they wake up, they do it all the same, 365 days a year.
Mm-hmm.
They are not mentally, they're going to be crazy. Like you said, they're going to be hysterical. They're going to be running. They're going to run through you. Like, might bump into you, might hold on to you, say, help me, help me, help me. Hold on to you. You might have to push them off and say, go outside. Like, go. Just keep running. I don't care where you go. I have a threat to eliminate. Like, I cannot deal with you right now. As much as I want to, as much as I want to help you, there are other people who need help. I cannot deal with you. You're not hurt. You're not anything. You're just losing your mind. Again, cannot blame you at all for that. Like, this is a crazy event that no one should have to go through. But that is going to be another, and then you're, like you said, you're going to have family showing up on the scene that are going to be trying to get into the scene. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute. We are dealing with people.
There's
that
a situation here.
Yeah, like, calm down. Like you said, I mean, I've dealt with it too. Like, we have had, like, on homicides, you have to almost fight the family to keep them out. They want to go, and I get it. You want to see your family member. I totally understand. But we have a job to do, and you're not going to help anything by causing a scene and by acting hysterical. And they will not listen to that most of the time, but you have to understand that is going to be something that you will deal with.
For sure. Kind of moving along, I kind of want to talk briefly about, we talked medical really hard, so we won't hit on that again. But I want to talk more about kit and rifle, if that's something you are going to, build out. Obviously, if you have kit and rifle in your car, you're probably already a person that has a knife, a flashlight, a CCW, and a spare mag already on your person. Like, you're doing the bare minimum already. So when we look at, vehicle kit, specifically for the active shooter, what do you think is kind of a good baseline or a good standard for guys to follow?
Like I said, if you're carrying your CCDW, you're carrying a light, you're carrying, I try to keep a tourniquet on me at the minimum. I mean, there's so many different instances. Like, we see people with compound fractures that break the skin that need to get a tourniquet put on. That's, whatever. But you got all those bases covered. If you want to carry a rifle, carry a rifle. Like, you're not, I hate to break it to you, but you're not SOCOM, right? Like, if you want to carry a 10.5, that's fine. Understand what that means. Understand what your velocity, what ammunition, like what your performance of the ammunition you're carrying is, whatever it is. Understand what your optic and your zero distance of said optic is doing. Don't be the guy that zeroes at 25 and you have a guy, you try to shoot him in the head, and because you're zeroed at 25 and you're shooting at a dude at 75, it goes over top of his head because of your, it's not a max ordnance zero, whatever it is. Understand the capabilities and limitations of your system. As far as kit, if you want to carry plates, carry plates. I would say that's more of a confidence boost and a peace of mind thing. As the guy, like in our active shooter scenario, like, I didn't go and throw on my level 4 rifle plates that I use for SWAT. I ran in there with my soft armor that I have, Hesco L210s or whatever that I bought myself. Now they issue rifle armors after that scenario, but I wore Hesco L210s that I bought personally. Cool, whatever. I'm not throwing a helmet on. I went in with a rifle and whatever I had on at the time.
Sure.
Definitely have medical on you. Like, you're going into a situation where you are expecting to get into a gunfight. So at least be able to treat yourself so you're not more of an issue further on down the road as the situation evolves. And I don't mean that to sound like harsh, but if you go in, you get shot in the leg, and you don't have a way to at least put a tourniquet on yourself, now we have another person that we have to triage and have to provide even more care to because you chose to be in that situation and chose to be ill prepared. Mm-hmm. I've seen, I can't remember the manufacturer, but there's a kit. It's like a chest bag. It's kind of like a crossbody thing with like a couple mags and like a blow up kit in front of them.
Yeah, I
can't remember who makes it. That would be like a solid, if you want like a minimal, like I've got enough stuff to treat myself, maybe a little extra and a couple mags, like to do rocket. Like that's solid. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to tell you not to carry as much stuff as you want. Like anything beyond that is just a bonus. It's just more capability that you have to go engage whatever threat you want to engage.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're at the point where you're carrying a truck rifle and kit, a lot of times I tell people, hey, general purpose kit is good for the civilian. But if you're at this point, you either want to be able to scale down that kit or build out something more simplistic to get that job done. And I know it's more money, but guess what? That is the life of preparedness that we've all kind of taken on.
100%.
I don't want to go into an active shooter with, my 8 mags, my pistol mags, my multi-tool, a smoke grenade, a flashbang, dual radios, full IFAC, 3 tourniquets, and full back panel. Like that's just a I'm saying that as I literally stare at my plate carrier across the room. Like that shit, it's like that's
that might be a bit much.
You could do it, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't need to.
No, and again, I'm not going to tell you like don't respond with that. If that's what you got and that's what you want to take, cool, man. Do your thing.
Yeah, you're gonna be a great meme.
Yeah.
Whether it's a good meme or a bad meme, you're gonna be a great meme.
100%. Yeah,
you better make sure your shit's squared away.
Yeah.
So what about rifle? I think rifles is specifically so this is my mindset on it. And correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. I specifically built out my truck rifle to be pretty much all mid-tier parts, both attachments and the rifle itself. But nothing fancy. It's pretty bare bones. Under the premises that, hey, if I respond with this rifle, I put down the bad guy, whatever it is, when it's all said and done, police are more than likely going to take that rifle for evidence for at least a period of time, regardless of really where you live.
Yep.
Now, I don't want my $3,500 rifle with high-tier optics and my D-ball laser and my dual IR white light Surefire and, all of this on my rifle. I'm looking at my rifle right now as well because I brought it in so I could look at it. I have a 10.5 inch AR. It is unfortunately pistol brace. It's the very first pistol brace I've ever bought, and my reasoning behind it is that if I do a good deed by stopping an active shooter, the last thing I want to do is catch a charge because I have an illegal SBR. All gun laws are unconstitutional, but
100%.
There are very few times I'm like, all right, we're going to play the game for the betterment of the cause. Now, what you have in your safe at your home, party on, brother. But if I am going into a situation knowing like, hey, this is how things are done and evidence will be collected, I don't want my illegal SBR to be collected and that be the downfall of my good deed. But I have a 10.5 inch AR with a standard Vortex red dot, a Streamlight ProTac, and a hand stop, and that is it outside the sling. White light, red dot, sling. Boom.
I mean, that's assault. I mean, like you said, why would you put a laser on a gun that you don't intend on running nods with? Like,
unless you plan on responding with nods.
I mean, hey, man, if you got it like that, fucking rock on, dude. I'm here for it. Cool. Good on you.
I want to be like you.
You're right. Like, tell me what you do for a living. Let me know. Right. But, no, I mean, like, as much as I would love to be able to tell you that the brace thing won't be a factor, unfortunately, depending on where you live, it probably, I'm not going to say probably, it could come into play, right?
It will. It will. Somebody will get in a tizzy about it.
Exactly. Especially with active shooters being what they are, just so everyone knows, like a federal agency, regardless of who, at least one federal agency will be involved. And that being said, like the federal agents are the only ones, like the ATF is the only people that can charge you with having a brace on your SBR, right? Like if you have an illegal SBR, if you have a brace on it or you have a stock on it, like I, as a non-federal law enforcement agent, I cannot charge you with that. But again, with active shooters being what they are, there will be federal agencies involved, probably to some extent the ATF, because there will be a firearm involved. Understand that. I would hope, I would pray that they have enough grace in their heart to understand that you did a good deed by saving lives and would look past it, but they're federal agents, so I don't have much
don't trust the ATF. Don't trust the ATF, guys. Don't trust them.
No. 10.5 inch, like you, I mean, I kind of like joked on it, like you're not a SOCOM dude. Honestly, for the average engagement, like I said, that one in Texas was 100-some yards. That's a pretty extended distance for a law enforcement engagement. Like even law enforcement snipers, the average engagement's like 58 yards for a law enforcement sniper. Like your average engagement distance is not going to be that great. But yeah, I hope not. You better have good. You better have solid PID, right? You got to be, and that's another thing is kind of going off topic. You have to be able to articulate why you shot and why you shot, who you shot. But back to the rifle thing, you're right. It will be gone for an extended period of time, depending on where you live. Depends on the amount of time it'll be gone. It's mostly so kind of how it should go is they'll look at it criminally. Cool. If you get cleared criminally, they still have to hold it until the time period for a civil lawsuit ends. Because if a civil lawsuit begins, they have to have that firearm for evidence for the civil lawsuit. If say you shoot dude in the stomach and he lives, shoot him in the leg, he lives, whatever, the suspect lives. This is America. You will get sued, unfortunately. I hate that, but you do a good thing and you still have to go through all the trouble of defending your good deed. But they will have to hold on to that for whatever, even if you don't get sued. If it's 2, 3, 4 years, they will hold on to it until that end, that time period ends, and then you will get it back. I'm like you. Personally, I'm not going to put my Hodge rifle, my Knight's Armament rifle, my LMT rifle, whatever it is. I'm going to have a reliable firearm that I trust with my life, right? Like, I'm pretty comfortable with BCM, right? Like, not super high tier. I trust BCM with my life. That would, like, I don't get paid by BCM. I'm just thinking of stuff out loud here.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah. BCM, send me some money. No, but there's a million companies now that you could say that about that are moderately priced and will get the job done just as well. As long as you have the time behind that rifle and know, like, hey, I've taken a rifle class with this firearm. I put 1,000 rounds through it over the course of 2 days with just lube or minor cleaning, and it's functioned flawlessly. You maintain all the parts that break commonly on it. Cool, man. Like, run what you got. It's not, no one should care what you run as long as you're comfortable with it. Don't go get your fucking, was that Bear Creek Arsenal or whatever, your upper you bought for $100 on a Black Friday deal. Like, bro, that's probably not the best idea. But,
Yeah, I went with a 10.5 simply for the concealability aspect of it.
Yeah.
I also move cars a lot between my car, like my daily car and my truck. So everything's just duffel bagged. So it's kind of convenient.
Yeah, and that's a factor for civilians that I don't necessarily think about. And I say that as a guy who runs either my work gun is 11.5, and then I got a 14.5 and an 18-inch gun. So like I have a short gun that I carry back and forth, but for concealability, like you said, switching vehicles, you got a 10.5-inch with like a law folder on it that you throw in a duffel bag that you can switch card. Like, dude, that is a solid setup.
That's mine. 10.5 with the folder.
Yeah. So, I mean, that'll get the job done at the end of the day. I really do think. Have a white light, because it might be daylight outside, but you go inside and the lights are off, right? Because whatever business you go into, they hit their active shooter button, whatever their protocol is, they turn off lights for whatever reason. I don't know. Whatever their SOP is. Cool. Now you're fighting in the dark. Do you have a light? I would recommend having a light. Sure. Definitely have, in today's day and age, definitely have some sort of non-iron sight, just because of it's easier. Like, honestly, I mean, have backup irons, I would recommend, but I mean, do what you want to do as far as optics goes. If you want to have an LPVO on there, rock it, whatever you got. Optic is completely personal preference. Red dots are easy. Red dots with mags are easy, but have some drawbacks and some benefits. LPVOs, same deal. Like, it's shooter's preference.
Mm-hmm. So kind of moving along, response to police and what to expect. We kind of hit on responding with police in the beginning, kind of interacting with them, describing yourself. Big thing, guys, if you have the availability, call 911, describe what's going on, say who you are and what you are doing and where you are.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
We hit on that pretty hard. Let's talk a little bit, though, about what to expect from police after the shooting is done. Let's say you were the good guy. You either helped put down the bad guy, or you put down the bad guy before police even arrive. What kind of response or procedures should guys expect from police? Because as much as I'd love to say, like, hey, you put down the active shooter, the cops show up, give you a high five, one guy fist bumps you, and you get in your car and you go home. That's not the reality, at least not most of the time. There's a few stories where that happens, but that's not reality.
Yeah. At a minimum, you're going to be questioned by local law enforcement, even if it's blatantly obvious, like you've got 40 calls for service on this dude shooting this guy, and it's the description of the subject that is currently deceased on the ground. And you say, yep, this is what I saw. This is what happened. I shot him. Now he's where he is. All right, cool, man. Like, there's going to be some questions involved. So kind of backing up a little bit, when we respond, if the threat is eliminated, we're going to do a search of the entire structure, whatever it is. If it's a 13-floor structure, guess what? We're going to search the whole 13-floor structure. I say that from experience, right? Like, it is going to take a minute. During that time, you will be escorted out. I'd love to say you're, like, for 100% certainty, you will or won't be in handcuffs. I'm not going to say that. And the reason I say that is because if you do eliminate the bad guy, if you have a gun out, someone will probably call and say, your description has a gun. They're shooting people. Like, that's just the way it is. Like, some people see somebody with a gun, even though they're doing a good thing. They might not have seen the other, the actual active shooter, and they're calling on you. That's why I just say you might be put in handcuffs, you might not. Like, I'm not going to say for sure either way.
Do most departments have a policy on handcuffing in front or behind, or is it kind of discretion?
It's for us. It's mostly discretion.
Police listening, if you show up and you suspect a good guy put down the active shooter, please do him a solid and handcuff him in front. If you have to handcuff him, do not 100%. Handcuff him behind his back.
Yeah, 100%. Like, dude, honestly, like, if I respond, and again, I'm saying this from a guy who's never responded to an active shooter where a civilian has eliminated the threat. I have one experience to draw from, right? Like one actual experience, but just me being who I am, I would be like, oh, you shot this guy? Cool. Let's just walk over here. I might take your firearm. Well, I will take your firearm from you because it's going to be used for evidence, right? But other than that, like, bro, just walk over here with me. We're going to hang out till the detective gets here. They're going to want to talk to you. All right, cool. Like, you're not free to leave, but I understand what you did. So I'm personally, me, Jacob, I'm not going to cuff you. After that, like I said, the triage is going to start, medical, all that stuff. We're going to try to round up as many other innocent people as we can to also try to get statements from. It's like herding cats. That I can't speak to. It is like herding cats. It's terrible trying to get it because most people just run and they just run and run and they just run to wherever they find safety, and then that's it, right? Some people might come back and say, yeah, I was in there and this is what happened. Some might not. If it's at a place where, you know, all the workers, you know, they know who clocked in and someone's not here, cool, we might try to contact them later. But as far as if you are a civilian response to that active shooter scenario, like, you're going to be detained and you're going to be questioned. And I don't mean detained as in like you're being charged with something, but someone's going to want to talk to you 1,000%.
And if you live in a state, it sucks. It sucks. I can't tell you what the right answer is. If you live in a state where you know that, or the big city, where the district attorney does not like gun owners, you know, civilians are not necessarily treated the greatest. I know some people aren't going to like me saying that, but you go to some states and, you know, law enforcement interacting with civilian gun owners does not go well, unfortunately. They just, for whatever reason, that's the relationship that's been developed. You really got to weigh the battle there. I'm not going to say it's how do I say this? You really got to weigh out the pros and cons of the level of your response, because law enforcement may show up, handcuff you behind your back, put you face down on the curb, and you may get treated like shit. Like it's unfortunate, but that's true.
It is. And like I said, it completely depends upon the calls for service that we get prior to us arriving on scene. If you're wearing a green shirt and blue jeans and the shooter's wearing a black shirt and blue jeans and they call and say both people are shooting, unfortunately, we kind of have to treat both people like suspects until we have, you know, we show up and green shirt, blue jeans is like, hey, you know, my hands are up. I've identified myself. I have, you know, I'm the guy that shot the active shooter wearing a black shirt and blue jeans. I am armed. You know, whatever you got to say like, yo, like, I'm a good guy. You will still probably get treated at some level as a suspect because.
And keep your cool.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Like,
you may not agree with what's going on.
Right. But if you did the right thing, eventually, and I would like to say sooner rather than later, like, you'll get taken out of cuffs. The right thing will happen. Again, it's kind of state dependent. Like, unfortunately, some states you will still be demonized. I'm sorry, but I know that's not a reality for a lot of people. So you just kind of have to deal with the hand you've got. But like, you have to understand it from law enforcement point of view. Like, we have been told there's 2 suspects, and until proven otherwise, there's still 2 suspects.
For sure. I would definitely say, and correct me if I'm wrong, your odds are a lot better in your favor, especially if law enforcement has not arrived yet. If you are applying aid to casualties when law enforcement arrives, that's going to paint you in a whole lot better light.
1,000%. Yeah, like, if I pull up and, you know, you're sitting there putting a tourniquet on someone, you're like, active shooters over there, you know, I'm the one that engaged him. I'm like, all right, cool, man, you're going to have to come with me. Like, after we verify the threat is down and whatever the situation is, like, thanks, man. Like, you're going to have to talk to somebody. It's not going to
Sure.
be me as a patrol officer, unfortunately. Like, you're going to have to talk to someone above me, but that will completely change, the attitude and the response of the law enforcement officers
Obviously,
based on the guys that I work with in my response. Like, I can't speak for every law enforcement officer, but
sure.
Yeah,
obviously it will vary a lot from officer to officer, but if you showed up active shooter and, say me, I have my triage bag out in the front yard of this business or whatever, and I'm either running triage because I'm a firefighter and that's already kind of what I know how to do,
Yep.
or I'm just a general civilian and I'm just throwing tourniquets and chest seals on people, and you're one of the first one or two officers on scene. Can guys expect an immediate, hey, stop what you're doing, come over here? Or would it be more of like all right, when we get done bandaging these people up, we got to have a talk, stay here type thing?
It's going to be completely dependent. So if we show up and we have not been told that the shooter has been eliminated, dude, honestly, someone might hang out with you and be like, who is this guy patching these people up? Like, we appreciate it, but who are you? And the other guys might push on to try to, do their search, do their secondaries, whatever it is, to ensure there's no more threat. So I can't say it's going to be an immediate, like, who are you? What are you doing? Like, stand up, come with me. It's kind of just
they may run right past you at first.
1,000%. Like, that might, if we haven't been told the threat's eliminated and I see a dude applying a tourniquet, I might just think, like, that's a dude. CCDW's a tourniquet. Or if you've got a pack on, you're like, honestly, I might be like, that's an off-duty EMS worker. I'm just going to walk past you, who happened to be close. Because speaking from experience, we had off-duty law enforcement and EMS guys show up to our active shooter wearing jeans and a t-shirt, helping people.
And that would be me. I carry a full-size trauma bag. I'd be off-duty EMS. And I'd show up.
You might 100% get passed over until you walk up to somebody and be like, hey, does anybody want to talk to me? I'm the guy who engaged the active shooter. And I'm like, oh, that was you? All right, yeah, cool. We need to talk to you.
Which will also help your case. If they walk past you, don't be like, all right, time to leave and get in your car and go home.
Yeah, don't. if you shot the active shooter, don't leave, because then that just makes you look worse. Like, you did a good thing. Like, own up to the good thing you did. Like, don't. So just don't leave.
Let's see. I had a question here a second ago.
Yeah.
Oh, never had it again. It had to do with interacting with police. I'm trying to think. I had a very specific question that we kind of got sidetracked. Let's see. What did we talk about so far? So we talked about first arriving officers and dealing with them. We talked about talking with officers.
Yep.
Is it common for, and obviously, you're one guy that works for one department. Can't speak for everybody. But say it's what we would generally conceive as clear evidence that you simply put down an active shooter. There's no sense of foul play or wrongdoing here. After you've talked with the detectives, you've given statements and whatnot, should guys expect, in the general sense, to still be detained further and transported somewhere else? Or is it more of a, all right, we have your full statement, we have your contact information, we confiscated your firearm, you're free to go, we'll be contacting you for more information later type thing? What should guys expect after that initial interview?
Okay, so I'm going to base this, again, from an active shooter scenario. Like I said, the one I've responded to that didn't occur, like law enforcement engaged a threat. From other self-defense shootings, what I'm going to tell you, what happens the majority of the time is we detain that person, we transport them to a detective's office, they give a statement, and they go home. If you feel the need, and I'm not going to tell you yes or no, but if you feel the need to have an attorney present with you while you give a statement, that's 100% within your right. Like, first of all, as law enforcement, we can't tell you no. Like, 100%. I'm not going to tell someone to give a statement without attorney because they're 100% sure on what they did or not. again, depending on the state you live in, some states I would say, yeah, go ahead and have an attorney with you because you might have had, an 18 round mag when you can only have whatever it is. Like, be as cautious as you want to be when you give your statement. But speaking from self-defense shootings, like we just had one last week. The people were transported to our detective's office, questioned, and then we took them home. That was it. With an active shooter, there's probably going to be more people who want to ask more questions. So you're going to probably have local law enforcement. And you're going to want to have, I'm sure, for our active shooter, the feds got involved and they were on scene within, very short order. They're probably going to want to talk to you. And for the feds, I would absolutely say I'd like an attorney. Just, again, like, man, it makes a lot of cops will say, that sounds suspicious. But, like, dude, when you're dealing with certain people, like, you got to have your ducks in a row. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, for sure.
It's better to be more cautious, and like, you're going to kick yourself in the butt if you mess up and say something and say you did have a restricted magazine or whatever sort of whack law you have in your state. Like, you're going to wish you would have had your attorney who prevented you from saying that versus not. You know what I mean? Like, just it kind of goes along with the general preparedness. Like, do what you can afford. And if you don't think you can afford it, when I say afford, I don't mean like monetarily, like what can your life afford? I always take the more cautious route, man. Like,
and some people don't like it. Some people think it's a waste of money. I've had CCW insurance for 7 years now.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I don't have it. I don't know what all that entails. I don't know what, I mean, you could probably enlighten me on this, but like, do they provide a legal service for you?
Yeah. So let me get my card out because there's actually some little information on the back. So I'm a USCCA member, and when you get issued your member card, it will have some little instructions on the back. So mine says post-incident instructions. Call 911. Explain I was attacked, feared for my life, and had to defend myself. Please send both police and ambulance to this location. Call the USCCA critical response team, and it gives you a phone number. And then it says, when responding officers arrive, comply and follow all police instructions. Explain that I was attacked, feared for my life, and defended myself. Point out evidence, witnesses, and attackers. Request medical attention if necessary. And then it says, silence. I will cooperate 100%. First, I need to speak to my attorney. And part of you calling this hotline number is that they will have somebody like on phone guidance to give you phone guidance like as this progresses. So even if you're like in your interview with law enforcement, there's somebody on the phone to kind of like help and guide you. Or I would imagine they would probably connect you with somebody like more proficient.
Dude, that is all solid. Like, first of all, this is kind of I shouldn't say like stuff you should know, but it is stuff you should know as a concealed carry, as a person who carries concealed. You should know your state laws and what it takes to be able to use it. Mm-hmm. Like that should be a prerequisite. Like, you should not conceal carry unless you know, I don't want to say verbatim, but you should know within, pretty close to what your state law says, what you can use deadly force for. Mm-hmm. Most states, it's in protection of yourself and protection of others. Generally, like that covers pretty much every state. And I don't know every state law, but because some states are like, no, you can't use lethal force to protect your property, like your house. Like, but most states, especially in states that like you and I live in, like, we can do that. Sure.
Does law enforcement, and then obviously the district attorney does, or whoever your pursuing legal office is, but does law enforcement have some level of discretion, or at least the power to essentially not initially charge you with something if essentially they see it as a good deed or the morally right thing?
Oh yeah. Like, again, going back to the self-defense shooting we had like 4 days ago, that they had no charges placed on them. It's complete, like, as a patrol officer, that's not my discretion. That's going to go to a detective who can sit down. They'll get statements from you. They'll get statements from other witnesses on scene. Like, hey, all this lines up. This dude came in, was shooting. You came in, shot that guy, started providing aid. All right, man. Like, I'll call you if I need you. See you later. Like that. Based on my experience from other things that I've seen, not active shooter, but from other shootings that I've seen in self-defense, which are the evidence is far harder to gather in a more timely manner, right? Like an active shooter, it's going to be kind of obvious, especially like they're going to write a warrant and pull video really quick, while you're giving your statement quick. If you choose to give a statement then, which I would recommend. If you want to call an attorney, call an attorney. If you don't, you don't. I would recommend giving a statement. That's just me personally. It's not legal advice for anyone listening. But if, like the evidence is going to be gathered pretty quick. And when you have 40 people that said, this dude was the guy, came in initially, he shot all my coworkers, whatever it is. Then you came in moments later and shot him. And this, like I said, started providing aid, whatever the case is. Like that, one witness statement saying that goes a long way.
Yeah.
And that's not afforded on most self-defense shootings. Like most self-defense shootings, it's you and the guy you shot.
Yeah, active shooters definitely a little easier, a little more cut and dry. Why'd you shoot that guy? Because he shot those 12 people laying in the yard over there with holes in them. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did the math while we were talking. So I pay $39 a month for my concealed carry insurance. And I have, like I said, for going on 7 years now. So essentially I have spent $3,200 in the past 7 years in concealed carry insurance, and I've never had to use it. I've pulled my concealed carry twice in my life as a civilian, not when I was in the Marine Corps. Well, actually, both of them was when I was in the Marine Corps, but I was off duty.
Yeah.
But I didn't have to shoot anybody. I've never had to call the hotline. But I've always considered, like, man, do I really want to keep spending this money? And then every single time I'm like, you better just keep it.
It's like car insurance, man. Like, yeah, I hate paying car insurance. But the second I don't pay it, I'm going to get rear-ended, and I'm going to have to pay to get a new car.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it kind of seems unnecessary until I don't want to say it's like a gun, but it's kind of like a gun. Like you don't really need it until you need it. And a gun is an even more, extreme of that. Like when you need a gun, dog, you need a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like insurance is kind of insurance, but like it kind of seems unnecessary until you actually need it. But when you do need it, I promise you an attorney will cost you more than $3,200.
Oh, for sure.
Like a good attorney, several $100s an hour. So,
adds up fast.
Yeah, it does.
Especially if you're in a state where things aren't so cut and dry.
Yeah.
Thanks for putting that bad guy.
You're in, New York, California, Washington,
Maryland.
Oregon now.
Oh my gosh, I hate Maryland's gun laws.
A lot of East Coast. I mean, I shouldn't say just New York, but like Massachusetts, all those states. Like, man, they're not gun friendly. Like you might have done a good thing, but there might be more questions initially where it kind of is almost like you're getting the finger pointed at you, even though you did the right thing. And for guys in that state, like don't let that persuade you from doing the right thing. Just understand and know that is a possibility of what can happen.
For sure. Is there anything else you kind of want to highlight as far as what to expect of police or tips for interacting with police after the active shooting?
Man, just like if you are actively engaging the suspect, like don't like drop your gun and put your hands up. Like, dude, you're in a gunfight. Like, if you have the opportunity, be like, yo, help. Even if you can just say, help me, like something that says that you are a victim, right? Like you are a guy that is not there to do harm.
Mm-hmm.
If it's help me, blue, 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 green, 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 like I'm a good guy, whatever it is. And you can, man, a lot of police departments are pretty cool with like guys calling and saying like, hey, if this happens, what can I expect? Without like, some officers aren't going to give away all their SOPs and TTPs and whatever all for, because they don't, you might be a guy with ill intent who wants to cause more harm and delay law enforcement response, whatever it is. But, if you call the department I work for and you want to speak to an officer and say, hey, I'm a responsible, citizen who conceals carry on a regular basis, in the incident of an active shooter, what would you, how would you like to, for me to be identified? I would tell you what I just said is call 911 and give a piece of easily identifiable clothing to us. And if you see an officer, like I just said, ask for help, identify yourself, whatever it is. If the engagement's already done, try to remain as calm as you can, follow instructions. Like, if you have anything in your hands, drop them. You're probably going to get put your hands above your head, whatever. Don't start running, right? Like, avoid pointing, screaming, yelling. Like, we're law enforcement responding to this. We're already going to be amped up. Like, don't do anything to continue to escalate the situation. It's going to be escalated as it is. Like, let's just try to bring it down. We're going to try to bring it down. Like, it's saying a lot. It's asking a lot from guys who have never been in that situation. But man, just try to do the best you can with that stuff.
And this goes back to the training thing. And I absolutely hate that the ATF has now limited access to simunition and UTMs to civilians. I absolutely hate it, and I damn them for it every single day because it removes such a great training tool, not just for the shooting perspective, but the ability to induce scenario-based training, which goes into my next point, is that in your trainings, however you train, whether it's you take classes, you train with other local civilians, whatever it might be, communication is huge. If law enforcement comes up on you and you're actively engaging the threat, or you're maybe waiting for a partner to push further in, whatever it might be, as soon as they walk up, identify yourself, identify what the attacker looks like, where they may be, describe how many victims there may be, just give information that shows like this guy is in the right mindset to work with.
Yeah, man, it's like a 9-line, right? You have the 5 to fly, right? It's not 5 lines per se, but we need basic information, like location, right? That's critical. Like, hey, he's here, but he's currently running this direction. That's also something you should also know is in your area, what's north, south, east, and west. Wherever you're at, wherever your AO is, like, you should know, if I'm here, this direction's north, south, east, west. You should know your cardinal directions at all times.
Here's an even better way of doing that. And I've taught civilians this for a long time because it's what we use in the fire service. I don't know if your firemen have ever told you this. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta side of the building.
Yeah, so we number it instead of that. But
does your fire department use number, or do they use? They probably use letters.
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I've never. All of my extent of active shooter training mostly has been with EMS.
They should use letters. That's kind of standardized nationally.
And
maybe they know you guys can't do that, so they just give you numbers.
Yeah, man, letters are hard. I can't really read. Like, I try, I put some stuff together every now and then and put some words together, but I got 5 fingers, and there's, I can do 1, 2, 3, and 4 side of a building. So
I got 4 mags. There's 4 sides to a building.
No, as long as it doesn't go over 5, I'm good. Or 10, because then I got to start taking boots off and I use my toes. But, location, description, the best description possible. Like, that is, you will be surprised at how much you do not see in a situation like this. Like, it's crazy. The amount of, victims that we see, like, hey, can you give me a description of the guy that just shot you from 5 feet away? I don't know, man. He was wearing a black shirt. Like, that's it? That's all you got? Yeah, that's it. Like, well, fuck. It's not super helpful, man. Like, I'm looking at 4 people down the street right now wearing a black shirt. Like,
you, sir, are wearing a black shirt.
Yeah, like, it's not super helpful. So, something that I tell a lot of people is shoes, because a lot of people, if you're wearing a hoodie, you take the hoodie off real quick. Dude, not a lot of people change their shoes in a hurry. Like, most people don't carry a spare pair of shoes. Like, you'll be in a foot chase with somebody, they'll round a corner, throw a hoodie off, and keep running. So you're like, oh man, is that the same guy? And you're like, oh yeah, he's still wearing whatever shoes he was wearing. It's kind of hard to change shoes pretty quick. Number of shooters, if you know there's one, say there's one. If you think there's more, be very cautious about saying, like, I think there's 3 shooters here, because then that opens up that chance of a good guy being mistaken as a suspect.
100%. 100%.
Only give what you know. Like, if you don't know what he's wearing, say that. Don't make something up. Like, I don't care if you don't know. Like, that's not going to hurt my feelings that you do not know. But don't be like, yeah, I think he was wearing a black shirt and blue jeans and, like, white shoes.
Definitives. Definitives.
Yeah, like, he was wearing a black shirt, if you can describe the type of weapon, most people, again, don't know weapons. They'll say it was a black handgun. All right, cool. I can work with that. Most people, they'll say it was an AR-15 and it was, an AK or something like that, but it's a rifle. If you say, oh, it's a large rifle. Okay, cool. But different. And then again, if if you can say, hey, there's a lot of people here that are hurt, say that. Those are kind of like the absolute basics. Location and description are the 2 that if you can give, please do.
Cool. Any other kind of advice to kind of wrap this up? Any tips of information?
No, man, please train. If you're a person that has this calling and the moral compass to where you want to do this, and this is something that, if the scenario happens to you in real life, you got to train. You can't just say, I've taken a rifle, pistol class, whatever it is, I'm good. Man, go seek training, whether it's through, ECT. There's some other companies doing it. Corner Mining Company is a newer one, kind of in my area in central Kentucky. I can't think of any more right now, but man, medical is a huge one. You're far more likely, and not just for active shooter, just life, right? You're far more likely to use medical than you are ever to draw your gun.
100%.
And I can't stress that enough. Like, go seek medical training. Seek rifle, pistol training. If you're going to carry a truck gun that is a rifle, take a class. I don't care if it's me or from anybody else. Take a class, know what it can do, know what it can't do. Understand the gear that you're carrying, how to use it, know its capabilities and limitations. And if you hit on it with the ATF restricting force on force. So I know it's hard now. If you can take a force on force class, do it, because it's a different ball game. And I understand it's just force on force, but if you put yourself in the right mindset, you can get a lot out of that. Like, I know you're not going to die during force on force. You're not going to die during force on force. Put yourself in the right mindset.
But you sure shit don't want to be shot.
No, you don't. It does hurt. So, but you can still get a lot out of that force on force if you treat it like it's not paintball, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if you treat it like it is, like, dude, this guy's shooting real bullets at me. Like, there's limitations. Like, you can't shoot a sim round through a window, but you can a real bullet. But there's a lot of good training value out of force on force, man. A lot of good training value.
For sure.
That's it. That's all I got, man. Train more.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on, buddy. I think this is probably one of my favorite episodes we've done.
Appreciate it. I'm just trying to help.
Where can guys find Grenzer Concepts at?
Just Instagram right now. It's look up my Instagram handle here. I'm terrible. I'm probably the worst businessman known to man.
Don't you have like
it's
Instagram
Grenzer
posts?
Yeah, I do. I have 11. It's Grenzer, GRENZER.concepts. It's just me. Like I said, it's a side gig. It's not my main job. It's something I do from time to time. It's kind of picking up in some different aspects that I didn't necessarily intend it to, but, yeah, man, that's pretty much the only way to reach me right now.
Cool. Well, Jacob, I appreciate you coming on, man. I think we had some good conversations.
For sure.
All right, guys. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Hold on. You told me to remind you this non-podcast question for law enforcement. I reminded you.
Well, this comes after the podcast.
Oh shit, my bad.
Now everybody knows we're having a secret conversation.
Oh no, I've ruined it for everybody. I'll see myself out.
Well, guys, that's all I've got for episode 33, Active Shooter Response. As always, train hard, train often.
Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Straight the numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours. Tell me turn it down and